Hey guys, we're here for our retrospective over all of Gamera. Trying to go with something different so it's stable. Given how long we'll probably talk about this, it's going to be hell in my hand, and last thing you want is me shaking it. So we're going to go in reverse order using these cards that came through with everything, and we'll go from worst to best. Obviously, the first worst, Gamera Super Monster, what we just went through.
Yep.
Good lord. What can we say about it we didn't already say?
Yeah. It was a train wreck. There's no two ways about it.
It was a horrible way to end a franchise. You don't end it on a clip show. You never
really
end
don't.
a show or a movie on a clip show. You don't. I don't think we can say any more about it, right? So our second worst is another major clip show. In Gamera versus Viras. Good lord. This one, what steps it up from Super Monsters, obviously, 3/4 of it is original footage.
Yeah, it still does have some original footage. It's just that the use of the stock footage is really egregious.
It is, and even the original footage, it's not that good until the last fight at the end. Everything else, the kids, well, not the worst. They are definitely not the worst. But, you know, it's just... Viras was the only saving grace. This would have been... And now, yeah, Viras had some saving graces of his own. You know, the whole stabbing him and everything, and that gift meme-worthiness. The kids, like I said, were not Toshi. And they're definitely not the kid from Super Monster either.
Yeah.
But they were still annoying. You know what I mean? Well acted. I will say well acted.
But still annoying.
So really, there's not much we can say about that one.
And from here, the quality...
The adults.
We're idiots.
They were beyond idiots. I mean, the UN. Oh, we are not. We got a whole. I mean, we're going to surrender because we have these two kids who aren't even from our own nation on board that ship. They had one kid from each nation, maybe, but two. One from the States and one from North America and one from Japan. Okay, but yeah, now this one. Now going forward, the
quality is shooting way up.
Gamera versus Giron. This is still very good. Very fun. It was a nice palate cleanser from Viras. Was it, wouldn't you say?
It was still a little bit hokey at times, but at least when it was hokey, it was definitely in much more of a charming way.
The space bitches were actually much more interesting. They brought about their own destruction. The kids were cute. They were not know-it-alls, like in the first one. Their sister on Earth, I've actually read a lot of people hate her. I didn't hate her at all.
Yeah, she was acting as you'd expect a kid to act in a scenario like that.
Exactly, like, Mom's gonna scold you. And then later on, like, Mom, listen. And then the constable was very cute. Not cute, funny. So I said cute because I saw trouble over there. But yeah, it was still very good. Space Scouts actually opened up a lot of stuff that they would utilize in the Guardian of the Universe. If you're wondering, she's in a chair. I'm not. That's why she looks taller than me all of a sudden. I look like a kid right now, don't I? Hey, can I have some ice cream? Mommy, I want some ice cream. Sorry. But yeah, though, I mean, overall, it was good. Space Gauss was interesting. The final fight was nice, though it was really hokey still with Gamera, you know, falling into the water for no reason. I do like him patching himself up with the ice. That was actually fun. And the fact that it wasn't on Earth explains away no adults to be idiots.
Because the kids are kind of on their own out there.
Exactly. And even then, the parents, you can understand why they feel that they won't listen to the daughter, the sister.
Because that's a crazy story.
Even though you had Viras attack the last time. Oh well. Next, we have Gamera versus Zigra. And this would have been much higher. It would have if it wasn't for the last act. It had one of the best villains.
Yeah, we're really chilled by Zigra. It's just like, I just kind of fell at the last hurdle.
Exactly. And it was like, this would have been way up higher if it wasn't for that last act. It's just, Zigra was just an awesome villain, awesome design, awesome voice, awesome, so much about Zigra. The kids were very good. And much like when we get to Jiger later, further up, it was, the adults and the kids had a balance. You know what I mean? There was a nice balance between kids and the adults solving everything. It wasn't. I would compare this in Jiger to being the slight inverse of Gauss, where Gauss you had the adults mostly doing the work, and the kid was there but wasn't dominating. You know what I mean, right? It was also the sister was the most annoying sister of the entire franchise.
Yeah.
Because she didn't contribute anything except being a nag.
Yeah.
So, anything else you want to add?
Nope, you basically covered all of the bases.
All right, next. This is heresy, I know. Gamera 3, Revenge of Iris. You want to take this one? Start off on this one?
Yeah. It felt like it was a movie that was trying to do a little bit too much within the various resources that it had, just sort of like time and plot-wise. Obviously, we're in the Heisei era, it's much higher budget in its production, but it's just... It kind of got too navel-gazy. Like, they didn't explain enough where they should have, and the stuff they did leave open-ended, maybe they should have made
more explanation. They had too many humans that were superfluous.
Yeah, it's just, there were too many side plots that just kind of got caught up. The monster design was really cool, and the effects were really cool, don't get me wrong.
Oh, yeah.
It's just that, yeah, there have been much better finishers in comparison, and it felt
I didn't mind the open-endedness of the ending. I did not mind that, especially when...
It's just that it was the rest of the movie where the open-endedness was the problem.
Especially with, when it comes to Iris itself and the girl. Oh, good lord, the girl. But it didn't help after I read the behind-the-scenes stuff in the booklet, the 80-page booklet, saying we wanted to see a human driven to insanity. No, it wasn't insanity at all.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like they really accomplished their objective.
And yes, they set up the notion of what if Gamera turns on humanity. Gamera didn't turn on humanity, not directly anyway. Gamera more like he decided, I don't care, I'm going to go after these Gauss. And humanity was rightfully ticked off at him. I mean, again, it's like, I think they were a little high on themselves, I think. I think they saw a bit more about the movie than they do. Now, to those of you who say it's one of the best kaiju movies of all time, I have to disagree. We both strongly have to disagree. This is not the greatest kaiju movie of all. I will admit, and now you haven't seen any of the Heisei or any of the Godzilla movies, but the Gamera trilogy as a whole really does give the Heisei Godzilla movies a run for their money. And I'm a guy who adores the Heisei Godzilla. So I can understand why people feel that way. So yeah, that Godzilla, Revenge of Iris, that would be number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're just underneath the halfway point on our list. Next, now this is where we're actually getting into the top 6. And this is going to be a big one. Gamera versus Barugon. First of all, this felt like close to a Godzilla movie, and I can say that as a fan. But this, well acted. It was for adults.
Yeah.
And it was good, but not enough monsters.
Yeah, not enough. It's like the human drama was good, but it's like you turned on a kaiju movie to see kaiju. Exactly,
and the bastard will just keep. Who I might add was in Zigra as the goofy glasses wearing dad. I'm like, that's the bastard? Really?
Wow. Guy's got some acting range, gotta give him that.
Yeah, but he was an interesting, out of all of the villains that we've seen in all the movies, he is up there with Zigra.
Yeah, it's just the sort of like this...
The amoralness.
Just like this sort of like unrestrained, amoral human greed that doesn't care about anything.
And the stupidity of him thinking like, oh, we need to stop the monster. I don't care about the monster, I want to be rich. It's like, what an idiot. At least he got a very karmic death, wouldn't you say? And Barugon, it's probably the only monster I felt bad for.
Yeah, because it was just sort of like an incidental thing to all of this. It was just a wild animal that had no idea what it was doing.
Most of that comes from after it had its own rainbow shot back at it, and it moved around like a wounded animal. You're like, aww. You actually felt bad. Next, Gamera the Brave. This, now that you've seen the Showa, comparing it to this,
I can definitely see what you meant by sort of it being like a tonal fusion between the Heisei and the Showa eras, and I'd say that it did it pretty damn well.
It did. It felt like a nice, cute movie. It wasn't trying to even be a kaiju movie, per se. But it had that same love and attention and adoration for children. It felt like, well, I gotta say, Jiger and Ziger, Zigger. You know what I mean? Didn't it feel like it felt in those?
Mm-hmm.
It didn't fit in the Gauss wheel department. No, it felt more in those departments where the kids are the center of the show. The adults are at least trying to help out in some regards, but are mostly useless. And the monster, Toto in this case, instead of Gamera, is trying to do his best.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it put it in the filter of the Heisei era, and it worked, if you ask me. It should have done better at the box office, I think.
Yeah, it deserved to do better.
Yep. Anything else you want to add?
Not much else to really say.
Some of the best kids, probably, originally these were the best kids. I'd say second best next to Ichi.
Ichi is the golden standard as far as these kids go.
But it's very close.
Yeah, it definitely
Tora is very close to best. Next, Gamera, the giant monster, aka Gamera the Invincible, where it all started. You want to take it from here?
Yep, this is where it began. It's that glorious black and white, though, that cheeky American footage, and just sending off into space. It was where Gamera got it.
It's self-going. Now, worst kid, or second to worst kid.
Second to worst kid, but obviously Gamera is the main monster here and the star of the show.
Exactly. And thankfully, watch the American Bush. I would not be able to tolerate that kid. If the kid in Super Monsters is basically no different than Toshi and just as bad, shoot me. You know what I mean? But Gamera is, we're calling Gamera and Gamera because unfortunately the dubs kind of put that in though. I was watching the Showa Era, right?
Yeah.
The Gamera was still like, you also felt bad for him too though, because he's just wandering around.
It's just like he just got woken up from his eons long nap and he's just kind of grumpy and hungry.
Exactly. And I gotta say, the way they handled the big reveal about him spinning around, we already knew that because we watched the Heisei era, but it was still worth it.
Yeah, it was still just like, hey, he's on his back, he can't do anything. Oh shoot, he can fly.
I know that we saw the UFOs, but you don't make the connections. You think it's two separate things, and they make fun of that. I will say this though, looking back now, the American footage do feel really shoehorned in, don't they?
Yeah.
Especially at the point where they're arguing about using the nukes, and then as soon as they bring up the nukes, they say, no, we can't use them. I was like, well, that made the American seem pointless. Okay, moving on. God and Gamera versus Jiger. This was... We didn't expect to be this good.
Yeah, we did not expect the movie to be as good as it was, but it was.
It
certainly had the most satisfying finish to any of...
The Showa era, anyway.
Yeah, the most satisfying finish of the Showa era.
I know, was the devil whistle. And it just... Jiger was a very dangerous enemy. Very smart.
Yeah.
It was definitely smart. Gamera was very well handled. The kids... These were the eldest of the kids.
Yeah.
And it worked. Even the younger sister of one of them, annoying.
But still tolerable by comparison
even the
to
older,
some of the other ones.
Even the older sister she was close to the one we would get in Zigra, but not that bad, thankfully. But but it was still, I mean, then you had the Fantastic Voyage stuff. That was damn good. You had, again, the stuff with the devils, and the stuff being at the expo. You know, you had so much very good stuff. The skeletons.
Oh yes, the skeletons.
We saw them again in Super Monsters, and it still gave us chills. Like, I mean, compared to Barugon, which basically I look at Zigra as being that step up from Barugon, where they decided let's cut the shit. You know what I mean? It's basically this. I feel Jiger is I feel what the original director would have done if he did Barugon. Do you feel that way?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do too, because, yeah. But yeah, it was definitely the second best of the Showa era. Next, we get Guardian of the Gamera Guardian of the Universe. The first
one
of the
we all
Heisei.
watched.
Yeah, the first one we watched and the first one of the Heisei era. Now looking back after Showa, what do you say about this?
I would say that it still holds up. It's still pretty fantastic.
And how is it for a reboot after Super Monster?
Oh, anything is better than Super Monster. The bar was set pretty damn low. But if you look at other things, it's just like, you can tell they kind of took what they had.
Especially from Gauss and Giron.
Yeah, they sort of like took a lot of those elements, synthesized them together into something that was simultaneously a new and fresh take, and yet something that also gave a nice tribute to its roots.
And not only that, you actually was one of the first kaiju movies to focus on humans reacting to the monster attack. Look at all the Showa. We never saw that.
Yeah, it's just like...
It was just that good, that clever. No one ever thought of that. You don't think about that.
Yeah, because you as the moviegoer are interested in seeing all the monster stuff go down.
And Gauss was very well handled. We'll get to more when we get to our next pick, but I felt Gauss in here was good, but looking back, a bit generic because it was just, multiple monsters. Mm-hmm. I think once you go with the whole, there's multiple of them, you kind of lose it a little.
Because it's just like, you sort of have to spread out the villain a bit, so you can't really necessarily have it concentrated in one thing.
Until we get to the ending where it's just the one and it fully grows. Mm-hmm. It's still really good, but I can see why Gauss is the arch enemy, but we'll get to that in just a second. But overall, though, it was a great start to a great trilogy. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I think it was just what Gamera needed. Now, also looking back at how it got with the kids, where do you stand on that with the Heisei era, with how it handled kids? Are you glad they didn't go that route?
I feel like that maybe they could have gone with it a little bit more, but on the whole, it was pretty good.
I mean, technically they did go with, what's her name? Steven Seagal's daughter, her. Mm-hmm. I think that was the closest they went with having that they were linked. And I like that. I like the link that they did. We'll get to that as well when we get to our later pick. But yeah, that was so good. Now let's talk about the original. Gamera versus Gauss. This is our number 2 pick. Good Lord. This was the best of the Showa. Hands down.
Indeed. We have a Dracula-looking bat fricker monster.
Yep. He can regenerate, or at least they set it up. And he is one of the most evil. Only Jiger is the only other one that gets 4 fights with Gamera. Mm-hmm. And each one is worthy of it. We have the best kid in Ichi because he wasn't annoying. You think he would have been, but he wasn't. He definitely set the gold standard for the kids because he's there. He's adorable. But at the same time, you don't think much, you don't think much about him, with the plot. The plot was the building the expressway, the expressway was surprisingly well handled. At first, I groaned because I'm like, oh, great, they're making now I'm just as greedy. And you turn out that's the point. But it's also that notion of when do you draw the line about keeping your land when you're barely making ends meet as it is? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even say, it's the home of their ancestors. But if you're just scraping by, there's no way in hell and you have an option to become rich as lords, you'd take it, wouldn't you?
I mean, most people would.
Yeah, and the adults almost actually get a win.
Yeah, they tried their damnedest, and they had concocted a strategy that almost worked. It just sort of fell in the last
engine malfunction. Yeah. The only downside I would give, it is still one of the weaker of the, finishing off the monster.
You just chuck Gauss into a volcano.
I get that. I mean, I get it to a degree, but why not just keep him in the sunlight and let him blow up or something, or shrink? Mm-hmm. Shrink down and then maybe Gamera stomps on him. Or something like that. That would have been more fitting, but drag him into the volcano.
That just
especially when the volcanoes are what woke him up. Mm-hmm. That's what bothers me. The volcanoes are what woke him up. And yet that's what finishes him off. Okay, and then last but not least,
our number 1.
Gamera 2, Attack of Legion. Good Lord, out of all of them, this was perfect. The perfect monster. Perfect handling of the story, perfect plotting, perfect everything. This really was, I won't say flawless. It wasn't flawless, but it had one of the best suits in the monster suit in the entire trilogy. Gamera was well handled. It definitely had the best comeuppance for a villain. Yeah. The mana cannon. Good Lord. Yeah,
that was something that was so epic to watch. It was just anime as frick. It had consequences in the next movie.
Exactly. The fact that meant that Gamera took a big risk. And the idea of the villain was clever.
It's a silicone-based life form that's come in to colonize things, whose very existence is antithetical to the life on Earth. It has another species of plants sort of along with the ride. It's got some elements of sci-fi horror in there where you're trying to work out the mystery.
Exactly. And
You've
again,
got the humans working together with Gamera was there.
You resolve the beads. The stuff with the beads. You resolve that. And then set up, you basically show the full potential of Gamera being linked to a human girl. Mm-hmm. Because this was Gamera at his most heroic in the Heisei era. Mm-hmm. And it was just it was like that perfect blend of the Showa-ness but before the break, I mean. It was Heisei, but it was starting to enter that close into the Showa era before it went off in a different direction for Iris. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, that's the reason why it's our all-time favorite. Mm-hmm. It is the best out of all of them in so many regards.
Indeed.
And it was the most satisfying.
Yeah, it was the most satisfying just as a whole to watch. It's just like, you got the humans who take care of the soldiers. You've got Gamera fighting the Queen Legion.
Yeah.
You got our gal. I forgot her name after so long.
But I know, because it was like a couple weeks ago. But yeah, and then now, that's all we have to say about that. Now, here's a little experiment Ingrid and I were having. What would we do if we were to bring Gamera back today? What elements would we keep? How would we try to bring in the other monsters, or would we just focus on new monsters? Answer, we would try to bring back as many of the old monsters as we could, except for the spaceship from Super Monsters. That one's off the table. No.
No.
But we would keep the Atlantis origin, for starters. Hold on a second. You can keep talking. My leg's starting to fall asleep.
Yeah. Basically, we keep the Atlantean origins. We maybe try and save the space girls as sort of like holograms of like the Atlantean scientists potentially sort of like explaining things.
Yeah, because they were fine.
And we sort of have them creating their guardians based off of one original thing that they originally got from space. Iris, or Proteus, as I would sort of like call this version, as it was sort of the prototype for all of the other guardian monsters they would create later and would have some element of all of their powers.
Jiger, Zigra, I could say Zigra being a guardian. All of these were attempts to making guardians to defeat monsters. If we go off of the Last Hope Dojin, that there were other monsters around. That's why Gauss was created. But we instead have it be all of these other guardians were created, but they either failed or weren't able to be controlled. Then finally the Gauss, and much like in the Heisei era, Gauss did his job too well. And it needed food. The only other food left was the Atlanteans, I should say.
Yeah, and so they basically ended up like recording a thing that just sort of like perhaps leave for future civilizations to like being able to like fully unlock Gamera's power or whatnot, or warning of just like sort of like this mother or like father of like all of the other creatures that they had created.
Now I'm also thinking before that though, Gauss's attacks releases Proto-Iris. And as you have Gamera and all the other Guardians, even the other Guardians decide like, okay, we'll fight this. They all work together to stop it. Mm-hmm. And thus that version is destroyed, but it leaves an egg behind. Mm-hmm. An egg that would eventually, whenever it does hatch, it would have the vague DNA, memory in its DNA of what happened, but not the recollection of it.
Yeah, or they would have some sort of ancestral memories.
Exactly, but especially it's been so long by the time it hatches, they'll be like, oh, what are these memories? At first. Mm-hmm. But after that, Gamera, of course the Gausses then make their bigger attack. The other Guardians are like, screw you, take off. Mm-hmm. Gamera puts out, and the other Gameras, because we're keeping that idea as well, go in one final effort. Not the Gamera we know, but another one of the Gameras ends up self-destructing itself and taking all of Atlantis with it. Mm-hmm. The Gamera that we follow goes into hibernation.
Mm-hmm. Probably in the ice, sort of like as a throwback to the very original movie.
Exactly. And eventually, something similar happens, explosion or something, a bomb gets dropped or something, or a plane crashes. Not a nuke, let's not go for a nuke.
Or potentially they're perhaps trying to like do scientific research within the icebergs or whatnot for some other purpose.
Yep, they find that and it releases Gamera. And Gamera then, yeah, he's cranky, he's grouchy. But I'm thinking we keep a bit more from Guardians of the Universe where someone finds the beads and studies those. Because I like those beads.
Yeah, those beads were definitely a unique thing that I would bring back.
Now, here's the big question. How much of the mana do you want to keep? Do you want to still have it be an essential part? Or do you want to tone down the essentialness of it? Because I think they brought it in and then they didn't really fully explain it.
Yeah, I sort of feel like it's sort of in that situation with, like, midichlorians in Star Wars, where it was an explanation that wasn't really needed.
Now, I did like how it explained why the Gauss is attacked and why the attacks got worse in the third movie, because he used the mana cannon. But after that...
It just kind of felt like it didn't really do much else, so I don't think we lose too much by cutting that out.
Yeah, now, I am thinking, though, instead of... Gamera actually, attacking and, like they have to send them out into Mars. We're not going to do that. I'm thinking eventually they attack him and then they find a way to, I think they overfeed him. And that puts him into a bit of a food coma.
Yeah, where it's just like...
Yeah, they do drop a nuke on him and that is a big one. And that ends up overfeeding him. So he's like, bleh.
And he's just sleepy for a while.
And then that would lead to the next one, which we will bring back one of the other monsters. Not Gauss. Gauss would come later. But which one do you think would be the best next one? Barugon? Try and go in order of the Showa, kind of?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, I think Barugon... Now, here's the thing. I'm thinking, in this case, Barugon and Jiger are siblings.
Yeah, they were sort of like... Both born out of, like, the same impulse, since they sort of had similar powers and, like, sort of like a similar demeanor.
But they kind of split evolutionary-wise. Barugon focused on the ice powers, which led to the crystallization, hence why its attack is a rainbow. Whereas Jiger went more into its reptilian side of things, with the shooting the tusks and the impregnation, hence why its beam is just a heat ray that's ultrasonics. Mm-hmm. And... yeah, I just realized we never talked about in the Jiger with, Gamera. Yep, now, here's the other big thing. Do we go with Heisei Gamera where he is helping humanity because it's convenient, but if he wants to, he will turn on us? Or do we want to go full on friend of all children?
I feel like we could strike something of a middle ground. Like, maybe it's just like... mostly interested in attacking Earth, maybe has a bit of an emotional attachment to children specifically, not necessarily humanity as a whole.
Kind of like closer to how he was in Legion.
Yeah.
Now, granted, that was because of the bond, but ignore the bond. I don't want to have the bond. I think the bond was it was a good idea, but look at how it ended up after you cut the bond. It went in too far the other direction.
But yeah, it was just like, you get emotional attachments to things. It happens.
But it doesn't have to be kids. I want to make that clear. We cut back on the kids. Mm-hmm. I think Heisei had the right idea with that. Do not make the kids the focus. You can have kids in there, but do not make them the focus unless you go like they were in The Brave. But I think The Brave was a unique situation where it was less a kaiju movie and more of a kids movie. Mm-hmm. But then I think as you go forward from there, you then we take care of Barugon first. Jiger comes later. I'm thinking, which one would be? Viras would be next, but Viras would be a space creature.
A space creature that initially sends in alien imposters to sort of infiltrate humanity.
Much better than they did in the movie. Much better than they did in the movie. These are ones that you really cannot tell the difference. Mm-hmm. But. And they're trying to, abduct people and everything. And I'm thinking that eventually that leads into, they get found out. That's where we get kids involved.
Yeah, where maybe kids have more of like an intuition for figuring out who the imposters are.
Exactly.
Because it's just like, there's just something not quite right about you. I can't explain why it's not right.
But for a kid, they just go with that impulse.
Aren't listening. But they know that something's not quite right.
Exactly. And then afterwards, they find out about it. We're just broad stroking things. We're not going to uber detail. But yeah, they find out Viras makes itself known. And I'm thinking there's some other weaker Virases that attack. And then finally we get the big one to makes itself grow, absorbs all the others into it, like in the movie, and goes for a big attack. Mm-hmm. Now, Giron. Should Giron be a former Guardian, or should it? I feel like Giron should be maybe humanity's attempt at making a Guardian. Because the knife does not sound like something you would have in ancient Atlantis.
Yeah, maybe that was sort of like somewhere in between current humanity and the Atlantean area, where they found Atlantean secrets and they attempted to sort of combine that with like.
But they didn't know. But they didn't know how to do it, so they ended up like alchemy.
Yeah.
It could be like alchemy. They try to do it. A knife gets in the mix, and then you have Giron.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's how we go. It's a simple. That's a basic monster one. But I think where the shit starts at the van is when Zigra shows up. I'm thinking Zigra, unlike the other monsters, gains intelligence.
Yeah.
It gains a super intelligence. And that's why it feels like, I know what's best for everything. Your oceans belong to me.
Yes.
And I think that's when things start to get dark. I'm thinking that's where if we have other human characters, some of them get killed or brainwashed.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking that's what we do. That's when we start to wind into the finales, which is when we get Gauss. I think Gauss should be the penultimate. And a mixture of, and a bit of the finale as well. I do think Gauss should be saved for near the end, as opposed to trying to get it out of the way. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, it's definitely close to the end. But where does Legion fit into all this?
Oh, Legion. Oh, actually, what if Legion actually ties in with Zigra?
Yeah, because I mean, like the original origin of Zigra was from space.
So yeah, what if Legion gave Zigra his intelligence?
Ooh.
Oh, actually no. We give Zigra. Then Zigra leads into Legion, and that leads into Gauss.
Ooh, yeah, that'd be good.
So yeah, we have Legion, and it's almost just like this movie. Almost.
We don't really need to change much about it to make it work, except for maybe the mana cannon stuff.
Yeah, but then Gauss shows up. Gauss, I'm thinking we have one big Gauss.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking Gauss, after everything happened, went out into space. That's where we get the space Gausses. But one stayed on Earth, and it's been evolving, growing. And that's the one that's basically like the second movie Gauss, keeping it different from the ones in this movie. And then basically it calls for, maybe we can keep the mana cannon, but once that happens, it decides, come to me, my children, my descendants, and all that, and they all come to Earth in swarm. Now, but I'm thinking, after they defeat the big one, but the swarm is still around, and eventually with all these Gauss around, since that would be reminiscent of what it was in Atlantis, that's when Iris finally awakens for the grand finale.
Yes, and it's just
and we keep the girl.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking throughout all of this, she's there in the beginning. Maybe she didn't lose her family right away. Should she have lost her family right away in that first one? Or do you think it should be a case where, no, she was a kid in the first movie.
Ooh, yeah.
And I'm thinking as it goes on, she's loving Gamera until her family gets killed with Zigra.
Yeah, and then she sort of feels betrayed by Gamera.
Then in the next two movies, she's falling into madness until at the very end of Gauss, she finds the Iris egg.
Mm-hmm.
And then throughout that, now I'm thinking Iris has a chance of just being a normal monster. It could have ended up like Gamera because it didn't recognize the memories. But her hatred for Gamera corrupts it, and it soon remembers what happened.
Yep.
What the Atlanteans did to it. And it sees Gamera as the example of it.
Mm-hmm.
And thus it decides finally to do that. Now you have no more Guardians. Gamera's on his own.
Mm-hmm.
That would be an issue, but I'm also thinking this. I'm thinking beforehand, at the same time the girl finds, Iris, a young boy named Tora finds a Gamera egg.
Ooh,
so we have Toto alongside Gamera. And then Gamera self-destructs to take out Iris, and leaving Toto behind to take over.
That sounds freaking fantastic.
So we can keep Toto involved, kind of give him the role of Godzilla Jr. from the Heisei era, and then we basically go for all the monsters, and yet we leave a future for Toto to go with.
Yep, and that's sort of a...
And we have a parallel as well with the girl raising Iris, and Tora raising Toto.
Yeah.
And then, while Gamera is trying to deal with the Gauss, just like in Revenge of Iris.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm thinking, the girl, she's not savable. I'm thinking she's too far gone.
Yeah.
Maybe Tora tries to get through to her. It doesn't work. And thus, or maybe he starts to, but she realizes it's no good, and she kills herself. Throws herself off a building or something. Or sacrifices herself to stop Iris. Something, but I don't think that girl would live. I hate to say that, but that feels like the most logical endpoint, if you ask me. Because I'd be honest, the way she went in Iris was that was too show-horned, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's what we would do if we would do it and do our own version. We would make it a big epic, 12 movies ourselves. Granted, no way we'd probably get through all 12. We'd probably, I don't know, make it a TV miniseries or something.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that. I would rather do it on Netflix, actually.
Yeah, that seems to be a good place to reboot things nowadays.
Yeah, do it for like an hour each, almost a movie length, and then we can get them all out and done with within one season.
Mm-hmm.
And leave the door open for someone else to take the ball and run with it.
Yeah, with Toto.
Yep, and I think also we would go to other countries. We wouldn't stick to Japan.
Yeah, we could have, like, these Guardians were situated at various points throughout the world, so we could see, like, various different places and whatnot.
Yep. So, yeah, that's what we would do, and that's our end of our Gamera Movie Marathon and our retrospective. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and Ingrid, what do you think? Are you glad I showed you them?
Yeah, I didn't expect I would become a Kaiju Turtle buff in 2020, but hey, anything can happen.
Yep. Now, of course, too bad I can't get you into Godzilla. One, way more movies to go through there. And two, I don't have the Showa set, and even then, that doesn't have all the English dubs. Some of them are Japanese only. I'd rather have some English dubs. You get what I'm saying, right? And even then, my favorite era, the Heisei era of Godzilla, is not collected yet.
Oh boy.
But hey, I would love to get you to watch some of those one day. But until then, I'm Starcraft. This is Ingrid. We thank you all for these 13 videos of Gamera. We'll catch you again later.